Joining us from New York is the founder of Judicial Watch and Freedom Watch, Larry Klayman, who has a new book out called Whores, Why and How I Came to Fight the Establishment. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
Larry
It's my
Klayman
pleasure. Thank
with
you.
us in New York at our Pace studios. We're going to read a couple of quotes from the book this morning. Starting off first, you write that I have never engaged in the services of a prostitute, but I have encountered a lot of whores in my career. People and interests that will sell out their nation, if not their family, for money, power, and fame. Unfortunately, such people exist at the highest level of all three branches of government, as well as in the media. Why isn't the media the watchdog on the three branches of government, in your view?
It should be. You know, we just had two great journalists die in the last month, Bill Sapphire and also Robert Novak. I think these two, who were icons, really understood the way Washington worked, and I spent over 20 years in Washington. But it's ironic that most people who write about Washington and the media don't really understand what goes on under the surface. And, you know, I believe that I do understand that. I spent time in government, at the Justice Department, the International Trade Commission, private practice. I've unfortunately learned the seedy underbelly of Washington, and this book is really my life story. It's what I learned along the way. How we got into the crisis that we're in today. It's a combination of three successive administrations that have failed the American people, and we're now in a severe economic depression. I believe it is a depression, and internationally the world's in chaos. So it's clear that something's gone wrong, and what's gone wrong is the club in Washington has not served the American people. It's served itself, and that's what this book is about.
Why hasn't the club in Washington, to use your term, changed through elections and such?
You know, the book Whores, people think that I'm talking about prostitutes, and the book opens up with a little vignette about the Washington police about 10 to 15 years ago rounding up the prostitutes on 14th Street and herding them over to Virginia only to have them come back. But the reason is that they do come back, and it's about money, it's about power, it's about self-aggrandizement, it's not about the American people. And that's where the word comes from. Even in the Bible, it's an age-old question. The tarnished city arose from the faithful city. God calls upon the counselors and the lawyers to restore that city because the city has become a whore. Everybody's taking a bribe. Everyone is abandoning the orphans and the widows. So this is an age-old problem. It's a little bit like going to the gym. You have to stay in shape. And to stay in shape, you need a strong government that is able to enforce the rules of ethics. We saw what happened here on Wall Street. I'm in New York today. There was no oversight. And you need strong organizations like Judicial Watch and Freedom Watch that I founded to be able to serve as watchdogs, to reveal what's going on, to demand change, and to bring lawsuits where necessary, and to try to make a peaceful second American revolution. I don't think anybody can dispute that we are in a severe crisis today.
You write in your book a good deal about transparency or lack of transparency in government. The administration, the Obama administration, has made a big deal out of transparency in government. What would that ideally look like to you? And rate this administration. How are they doing so far on that issue in particular?
Not very well. I mean, every administration, whether it was Clinton or whether it was Bush or whether it's Obama, they all come in and say, we want transparency in government. The Obama administration is no more transparent than the other two were. From the day one in the White House, for instance, and you know, this is a little bit off the cuff, but they've been throwing parties every week. We sought information on how much they were spending on these parties. Stevie Wonder, movie stars, you name it. It was like the Beverly Hillbillies back in the White House carrying on. And we wanted to find out what was being spent during this period of economic crisis. And we can't get that information from the Obama administration. And it's not the only thing. The flyover of New York, where I'm here today, they held back information on that, where people got scared. They thought it was another 9/11. So they all talk about that, but very few administrations, in fact, I don't know of any in my lifetime, have come forward with information. And certainly the Bush administration stonewalled almost completely any information. And the Clinton administration, as you'll see in my book, Whores, they just simply destroyed the documents. So using one method or another, we don't get transparency.
Before we get to cause, you were initially supportive of the Bush administration. What turned you sour against them?
I was never, really supportive of the Bush administration. I was always very hesitant and I'm talking from a personal standpoint now, not as head of Freedom Watch, to vote for President Bush. I didn't think, frankly, he was up for the job. I thought he was put up, much like Obama's been put up today, as kind of a Trojan horse for other interests that wanted to pursue their agenda. Right out of the box, I challenged the Bush administration on the Cheney Energy Task Force. The case went all the way to the Supreme Court. And of course, we remember the famous duck hunting trip by Dick Cheney, where he went with Antonin Scalia, the justice who wrote the opinion that struck down, in effect, the Federal Advisory Committee Act, denying us information about what was going on at that Energy Task Force. And lo and behold, years later, we can surmise that what they were doing was dividing up oil interests in Iraq in large part, among other things, because there certainly wasn't the reason that they stated for invading Iraq, as we later learned. So I've never been a supporter of the Bush administration. I was personally a Republican. I'm no longer a Republican. I think both political parties have disserved this country. And the present administration has all the same Clinton people back. You know, the whores are back in power. And you've got Obama sitting on top of that with an agenda. He's got a complete, he ran the House in terms of the deck of cards. He's trying to push through a far left socialist agenda, which is even further left than what Europe thinks should be done. Europe, ironically, has mostly conservative governments these days. So we have a situation, not just with regard to transparency, but with regard to pushing political agendas quickly, and the American people don't know the facts behind those agendas. And this has been the case under the last three administrations, mostly Bush and now Obama. Clinton was so preoccupied with scandal, he didn't have time to pursue any real agenda.
Larry Klayman, we have calls lined up for you. Birmingham, Alabama. Katie is a Republican caller. You're first. Go ahead.
Hi. It's so frustrating as an American citizen to see the way government works to serve their individual interests. And in my opinion, this administration has its foot firmly planted on the American economy with all of their agendas that they seem to want to ram through. What can we do? I mean, 2010 can't come soon enough to be able to change our votes.
Well, you know, one of the things that Margaret Thatcher talked about is that you don't have a healthy economy unless you have a legal system that works, that protects the rights of the American people. And my book talks about that, how our legal system has frankly broken down. It's become a cesspool. Judges not making decisions on the merits, but on the basis of feathering the nests of those who got them their jobs. You've got lawyers who don't tell the truth. You have to have a good legal system to be able to invest money in the system. And then, of course, we have President Obama, and you have Congress, who comes up with $1 trillion bailout. Nobody's seen that money, not even the left. And I live in Los Angeles, California for the most part now, and I can tell you, even the left in Hollywood is getting very concerned, if not agitated, at the inability of this administration to affect the economy, having sold everyone a bill of goods and not told the truth and not had transparency to get back to the original question of what their motivation was. So we are in a crisis. This book shows what that crisis is. It gives examples of how we can remove ourselves from that crisis. But the biggest problem are the people who are running our government, who are not serving us well. And while I cannot advocate who to vote for as head of Freedom Watch, as a personal matter, I can tell you that people should look carefully at who they're voting for, that we should bring lawsuits, as I have, to uncover why the TARP monies went to big banks but not to medium-sized banks, and that's why you can't get mortgages, why the $1 trillion bailout has gone to help President Obama's friends, not the little people in the street, and why our international relations resulted in a war where thousands of American lives were lost, where we had a situation that it's going to deteriorate once we leave, just like Vietnam, and the rest of the world went to heck. Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, North Korea. This government, run by Democrats and Republicans, has not told the truth to the American people. It has sold the American people out for their own interests. And there's a little story in my book, if I can relate it. I was in an office right after 9/11 with Arlen Specter, the senator from Pennsylvania, who I know quite well, who recently had a miraculous conversion from Republicanism to Democratism.